Ladies and gentlemen, today I've got myself pretty worked up, but actually for once in a very positive way, because this is the brand new chassis from Phanteks. This is called the Phanteks XT View, and this has got me incredibly excited because this is not only a very modern and sort of minimalist chassis that I think a lot of people are going to love the looks of and be able to sort of put big graphics cards and future motherboards and things inside here, but actually it's more the price point, because this costs at the time of filming about £75 here in the UK, and with a rebate $80 in the US. So you're getting a lot of case for your money. You've got 3 RGB fans, it supports the next gen BTF and Product Zero MSI motherboards, and I just think it's a great all-round looking chassis. So what we're going to do is a lovely mid-range build. We've paired all of these components perfectly, and we're going to show you whether this case is any good, what the performance of our rig is going to be like, and ultimately whether you should be buying it. So stay tuned as we do a full build in the brand new Phanteks XT View, right after a short word from this video sponsor. The Acer Predator Helios 16 and 18 have arrived, and these gaming laptops take Ultimate to a whole new level. With the latest 14th gen Intel Core processors, Nvidia's 40 series of laptop GPUs, and the option for jaw-dropping 1000 nit HDR screens, these laptops can quite literally do it all. Not only that, but 1 month of PC Game Pass is also included with any computer in the Acer Nitro or Predator gaming range, with titles like Diablo 4, Manor and Forza Motorsport ready to play on day one. Learn more today with the link down below. I think the most appropriate way to properly kickstart this video is to remind you that building an expensive, luxurious case is a lot easier than building something that's luxurious on a budget, because you're always going to be cutting corners, and you can definitely tell that this has been done here. I mean, the glass isn't the largest, it's not the thickest I've ever seen, it's not thin by any stretch, but you can definitely tell even just by picking this up. I mean, it's not particularly heavy, I can hold it just about with one hand, whereas obviously if you get something like the Phanteks NV5, that is, well, it doesn't come with any fans, that's how that manages to reach a price point that's not actually dissimilar to this, but that feels a lot more expensive, and it also is a fair bit bigger too. But I do like what they've done with this. I think it's a really nice blend between features, size, and affordability. I mean, you get the 3 fans fitted as standard, which I think is great, because to be honest with you, most people that build a gaming PC don't want to be upgrading their fans. They want something that's decent enough that they can probably turn down and then, you know, let their CPU cooler and graphics card do all of the cooling, which is absolutely fine. If you do want to expand that though, your options are a little bit limited, because obviously you can't put anything on the front, but you can put extra fans down here at the bottom, which is nice, but obviously this one is always going to be blocked by a power supply. If you're a fan of 140s, this isn't really the most appropriate case. You could put 2 here at the top, but pretty much you're looking at 360s all round. I don't think you can put radiators down the bottom. I don't think you're going to have the clearance, so you are going to have to make do with the top and here. But if you're going for like custom cooling or anything really that's going to be quite thick, then I think you're going to be restricted by the size of the graphics cards. So definitely look at something like the Phanteks NV5 if you want to take your rig a bit more seriously, but actually for what most people are going to want, I think this will look great. Only thing I will say is that if you saw my video on the H6 Flow, you'll know that if you're going to put like a really big air cooler on this, with this sort of open glass style, it does look a little bit weird. So I'd recommend going for an all-in-one unless you're on a budget, or you're going for an air cooler that's a little bit more on the smaller side. I mean, even the stock Ryzen cooler, right, it will look absolutely fine here, but yes, I probably wouldn't advise grabbing an Assassin 4 and putting it here, because it might look a little bit weird. Look a little bit closer though, and you'll definitely see a lot of other cool features. I mean, the most obvious one is this little light bar down the bottom. I imagine that is going to be compatible with ARGB on your motherboard with a converter, because Phanteks goes for digital RGB as standard. And then you do also have cutouts here for ASUS's full-size ATX, BTF and MSI's Project Zero motherboards. I'm second guessing myself, but no, I'm pretty sure that you can't actually put M-ATX motherboards in here that are Project Zero or BTF, which I guess is a little bit of a shame, but it probably would take away some of the structure and rigidity. But yes, if you're looking for one of those like wire-free motherboards, this is supported, but obviously make sure you buy a full-size one. Moving to the top of the chassis, I don't like the fact that they have cut down the number of USBs here. You've only got 1A and 1C, which actually is probably less useful for most people. I think most people would probably rather have 2 USB-As, but if you're trying to charge like your phone or something, I suppose that's good. Power button, reset, and then your color changing for the RGB if you don't want to sort of hook that up to the motherboard, which actually I find easier, because then you don't have to deal with motherboard software. You do have a dust filter as well for the 360 on the top which does remove. And then coming to the side, obviously you've got your ventilation here for your fans or radiator or whatever you want to put there. It's definitely not the most open mesh in the world, so I think this is going to be fine for fans, but radiators and things I definitely would lean towards putting at the top if you can. And then this side panel, I'm afraid to say, is where the whole case does start to feel quite cheap. It does tend to get a little bit stuck. I'm not putting this on, it genuinely does do that. And then it's just a little bit thin, a little bit wobbly, and this is not the most premium experience in the world. But again, if that's the trade-off you have to make, not the end of the world, because once you've built your rig, you're not really going to be taking it apart all of the time. You've got this detachable SSD plate as well, but if you want to put like hubs and things, you probably can get away with it, but you've not got like the largest amount of thickness between the back of this and then obviously where the side panel goes. So in a way you might want to take this off and then sort of have your fan hubs and things there. But I think you'll be able to make do with it. In terms of cable management and stuff, you've not even got any grommets and things, which I find quite disappointing. And there's not really any natural channels or ways that you can hide cables. You can also put 2 hard drives down here. I think you put one on the top, one actually in the bay. You could do a total of 5 2.5-inch SSDs as well, but it depends obviously how many hard drives and things you're using. But obviously most people these days will use probably M.2 and then maybe bring like an old hard drive and an old SSD or something like that along with them. So most people will be fine here, but obviously it's always worth checking if you've got loads of drives. And then last but certainly not least, for those freaks that like to see the bottom, here it is. You have a removable dust filter for easy cleaning that comes out, but otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty standard base of a case. Base of a case, that's the name of my new band. Pressing on to the build itself though, today we're going for upper mid-range, and the motherboard that we're going to start off with is this one from MSI. It's the B650 Carbon Wi-Fi, and this is pretty much the perfect build for most people really, because it's not the most expensive one in the world, but it still has loads of features and actually loads of USB. This is one of the most underrated things. I mean, look at all of those ports. If you want to stack devices together, obviously you can do that here. It comes with Wi-Fi as well, 2.5 gig Ethernet, which is really useful, but obviously the main thing is that it supports an AM5 socket for all of the current and future AMD CPUs for the next few years. Obviously you will also need to grab yourself a CPU or a processor, and this of course is from AMD, AM5. If you can grab the 7700, that is actually a lower TDP chip, so especially if you're going to go for like a stock cooler or something like that, that's probably what I would advise. But this is an absolutely epic chip when it comes to gaming. It's going to give us sky-high frame rates, and 8 cores are going to be more enough for the future and for a little bit of productivity as well. While we're here, I'm also going to remove the default AM5 mounting hardware for our cooler. You're then going to want to grab yourself some memory or some RAM. Obviously DDR5, please don't buy DDR4, it will not fit and you'll be sending it back and you'll be sad. This is some stuff from Kingston. It's their no, it's not HyperX, that was ages ago. It's their Fury RGB. This is running at 6,000 megahertz, I believe. If you want to save a little bit of money and go for 56, then you can. But essentially, if you have fast, low latency memory, it can give you slightly higher frame rates, but it's not necessarily going to make a massive difference if you're playing at like 1440p or 4K. It's more when you're sort of CPU bound really, which happens more at 1080p high refresh rate. We actually recently did a video all about RAM capacity, by the way, because this is a 32 gig kit, which is pretty much the sweet spot for gaming. You can save a bit of money with 16, but essentially if you want to see the performance difference between 16, 32, 48 and 64, we've already made that video. It's in the top right corner of your screen. And then the last piece of the puzzle to complete our motherboard combo is of course the SSD, and I'd recommend going for PCI Gen 4 and grabbing one that is at least 1 terabyte in size, because games are getting so big that if you only have 500 gig, it's a nightmare because you're always running out of space. Installing this is actually very straightforward because it's completely toolless on this MSI board. It really is just a case of lining it up, look, with this slot, and then dropping it down, catching it, and then putting this back on top. I mean, I say that, if you haven't already, because you probably haven't used your board before, make sure you do remove the plastic film, or obviously it's not really going to do anything. We should now be ready to put this inside our case, which of course means laying it down on our desk. We'll actually remove this bundle of cables. Oh, you're joking, they've cable tied them together. That's bad, why have they done that? This is why you need your tiny little pliers. And you might think I'm joking, I'm not. Look at the ease of that. Pick up your motherboard then and just line this up with that huge gaping hole at the back. You've got this little standoff here that should kind of like automatically catch the motherboard. There you go, just like that. And then in the hard drive cage, you should find all of the screws and things, but I would always recommend doing that before you've put your motherboard in. But to be fair, this one has a really nice strong catch, so it doesn't look like it's gonna fall out, but I wouldn't advise it. Oh, and because this is a cheaper case, you don't get that lovely Phanteks plastic box either. I'll tell you what you do get though, the most insane amount of cable ties I have ever seen in a bag. I mean, you can give us all of these, of which we'll probably need 3, but you can't give us any cable management grommets. I know this is probably because of like the BTF and Project Zero, but I mean, come on. Sad times indeed. Let's get that screwed down. And actually, now I prop this back up so you can see inside our semi-finished rig. Something I've only just noticed that I really don't like is how you have these like daisy-chained fans here and the cables are visible. Like, I don't know why you couldn't get them around the back. I assume it's just because they're not long enough and they haven't been able to incorporate that. But that is the sort of thing that would actually quite annoy me. If you were using other fans, then this wouldn't happen, so, Wait, and hang on, are all of these fans set to exhaust? I'm pretty sure they are. Those are blowing that way, this is blowing at the back. That seems very odd to me because you'd think most people that build this PC are not going to be like changing their fans or even thinking about the orientation. So I know that's like not the end of the world, but I mean, that seems very odd. Why would these not be the intake and that be the exhaust? USB-C plugs into this little silver connection here. USB 3 is down the bottom. Front panel is bottom right. HD audio is bottom left. I am wondering, by the way, with the fans, if it is going to be better for us to turn them around. So to unscrew them, it is obviously very straightforward. It's just these 4 screws that are pre-fitted. But then, of course, you've got everything that's pre-cable tied for you. So if you do want to flip them around, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. I mean, this doesn't actually reach anymore, look. So I would have to unclip that. Fast forward 5 minutes and a cable tie later and everything has now been replugged in as it was. A lot of daisy chaining, not the neatest system out there, but at least you now have these little like cable management or daisy chain nubbins, I should call them, that are partly hidden around the back. So when you turn it round, you no longer have those connections there. But obviously the elephant in the room is the fact that you can see these Phanteks labels. So that is why they had it the other way. And if you're not running like a particularly high wattage system, you can probably leave it as it is, it's absolutely fine. But as I say, those little connections would have annoyed me. And I want the best airflow possible, especially bearing in mind we're using a 360 rad up top. And I'm afraid this is another thing that has put a bit of a dampener on our build, because I understand why Phanteks have done that, but the question is, why not just develop a fan that looks better, that blows that way? Because Lee and Lee do it, they've got reverse blade fans, but obviously cost cutting and cost saving measures have led us to this point, so it's not quite as perfect as I thought it might be. Moving on to the next step of our system, we have our CPU cooler, and this one is literally my favorite that you can buy at the moment in terms of price to performance. It looks good, especially in a chassis like this that's more like a showy off case, but you can still find this for around about £90. It's insane when you think how much water coolers cost, and bearing in mind it isn't going to be like the absolute best cooler, but I mean, unless you're going for an Intel system, that doesn't really matter anyway. I think there's definitely a lot of people that are wasting a fair amount of money on liquid cooling when you could get something more like this. I mean, I actually use the 240 version of this in my personal system, so I can vouch for it. Oh, actually, I say that though, but this is the newer SE version. I've got the older one. That pump head looks even better. Once your fans are screwed into place, you can then daisy chain all of the RGB and fan together, and then you should have a couple of cables left. You don't have to use them, but they do give you these low noise adapters if you want to kind of like force your cooler to be quiet, but obviously this would be at the cost of thermals, but I don't think it's going to matter here because we've not got a particularly high wattage CPU. If you went for Intel, probably don't use them. Oh, actually no, I'm going to stop myself. I'm going to be sensible here today because you're not really going to have any room at the top to plug in your CPU connections once you've got your radiator in. So if you're using a modular power supply, I would advise plugging the cable in now, or if you've got a non-modular power supply, then stop, get the power supply in first, and then put your CPU cooler in. We only need the one cable here, and it really then just is the case of feeding this through, plugging that in, and then install our cooler. Then you can just screw it down into position, daisy chain that with the RGB we have for the case already, and then plug in our fan cable to the one that's called CPU 1. Once that's done, you then want to go drop your screws on the floor. You're then going to want to grab your mounting hardware, and the AMD stuff is really easy. You've got these like black plastic bits on the underside and then a screw that faces up, and this just goes on those holes that have opened up once you remove the default AM5 mounting hardware. Then we can grab these little mounting brackets, screw the bracket onto the pump head, and then it really should just be a case of lowering this on top of those screws, then use the nuts placed on top to obviously hold that and secure it down. Once you've done that, you can then plug in your pump to the one that says Pump Fan 1, and then of course connect that addressable RGB. Really pleased to say that we are now almost there. We're going to move on to our power supply now. This is a 750 watt unit from Cooler Master. They recommend a minimum of 750 watts for the 7700 XT. Personally, I think that's probably very conservative, not in a political way. This is not the channel. I mean, it is red, so maybe it's a Labour graphics card. Basically, what I think has happened is that the Intel CPUs now use so much power that they're kind of like maybe protecting themselves a little bit too much. If you're going for like a 65 or 100 watt CPU like we are here, then obviously you're going to be drawing less power. You won't need such like a high amount. But yes, this is gold rated. It's got PCI Gen 5 as well if you did want to go for an NVIDIA GPU, green party. I can do colors. And obviously this is fully modular as well, so it's a fair bit easier to build in and you don't have to worry about stuffing loads of cables that you're not actively going to use. Once everything is connected, obviously just line this up with your bottom chamber. It's nice to see that they've given you enough room as well, so if you have already plugged in this HD audio, you don't need to take it back out again. Let's feed the cables through to their respective positions. Whilst we're here, we'll also plug in that SATA connection. Then we can pick up and plug in our ATX. And then I was going to say plug in your PCIe, but of course we don't have anything to plug in yet. So yes, this is actually one of the all-round best value graphics cards you can get at the moment. This is the 7700 XT, which if you remember, when this first came out, I kind of wasn't a fan because the price was too close to the 7800 XT, which had quite a lot more performance and extra VRAM. But as things have progressed, time has gone on, actually the price difference has become quite big, and this has come down in price significantly. So suddenly, this is actually a pretty good value option because you're getting loads of performance for 1440p gaming without all of the cost associated if you went for like an NVIDIA card or something like that. We do have real and genuine PCIe slots. You've not got to like fold and break anything off. Decent thumb screws too. And then of course you can grab your graphics card and just line this up with that slot. Give it a good push home, screw it down, and then of course grab those PCIe connections that we've already fed through, plug those in, neaten everything up, and then I think that, without obviously the final cable management, is our rig complete. And what do you think? I think this is actually surprisingly neat and tidy. I mean, yes, obviously if you went for BTF or Project Zero, it would eliminate a lot of these cables. And in a way, I actually think they've probably made not necessarily a compromise too far, but I think if you went for BTF or Project Zero, this would be a more suitable case because clearly all of the like cable management problems that we saw would go away. The exception to that, of course, are these fans, and I think that's actually my biggest disappointment with the case is the inclusion of fans with, you know, either labels that you see that look a little bit unsightly, or obviously the fact that you do have those like quick connect daisy chain connections that are visible no matter which side that you go, and especially if you left it in the default configuration, which is the wrong airflow, let's be honest, either way, but it's going to be right here when you're going to see it. I think they could have done a little bit more, and even if it was just a slight tweak to an existing fan or something like that, I think that would have improved it. But that is being pretty nitpicky because otherwise this was very easy to build in. Quality was good enough that I don't have a problem, especially at this price point. And I think all round it is definitely a very good looking chassis. It's just, yeah, cable management around the back is, I don't think it's going to be tricky because you've got enough room, but you've not really got anywhere to put them. You're just going to have to do your best with not much. Well, with loads of cable ties at least. I mean, look, there you go. That is 3 cable ties and that does already look better. Actually, look, make that 4. Don't say I don't ever do anything for you, but of course it would be good to also have some straps and then this would have been a fair bit easier. But shall we have a look what it looks like turned on? Of course, in order to do that, we will need a keyboard, mouse, and the PC-Centric mouse mat, available at pccentric.store or linked down below. Let's give it a go then. Moment of truth. Oh. Oh! Don't lie. You also thought it didn't work. There you are. There are our fans, of which 2 aren't spinning. I can probably fix that. But that's a lot of RGB, isn't it? I like how diffused this strip down the bottom is as well, because normally with like LEDs and RGB, you don't want to have them somewhere like where you can see them. You want to just have the light from them, not the bar itself. I think this looks pretty good. But does it work? Yes! There we go. Ah, just not plugged it in properly. Classic PC-Centric. But yes, there you can see. Now with all of our fans spinning, I think that is a pretty gaming PC. And of course you can use the hardware buttons to change the RGB. You can also sync this up to your motherboard if you want. I mean, it's entirely up to you. But but you've got one button that sort of goes through all the different modes and things. So here you've got like RGB effects, and the fans do match quite well. I'm definitely quite pleased with that. But then your other button will cycle through a mixture of speed and color, I think. So it would be easier to obviously control this with software, but if you're someone like me that doesn't actually like having all this software running all of the time, then maybe that's better. But if you did want to sync it up with your Fury RAM, you probably will have to use your motherboard, but it's always nice to have the option. Right guys, whilst we're waiting for Apex Legends to load up, I think it is peel time. The best part of any orange. No, not funny. Well, I'm trying. Cut me some slack, okay? But here's your peel. Now that was perfect, but the best bit is that you actually get a double peel. 2 for 1, buy one, get one free, baby. But all jokes aside, guys, I genuinely do love the look of this chassis. I think it does have a lot to offer, and the best thing about it is not only the price point, but the fact that you don't really need to add anything to get it looking very similar to this. I mean, obviously, yes, going for an all-in-one, as we've discussed, is going to yield a better result, probably thermally, but definitely in terms of aesthetics, versus going for like a smaller, cheaper cooler. And the fact that you can sync everything together really easily definitely is a big boon here. And to be fair, I don't actually mind the look of the back of the fans. I know it's not quite as nice, but as far as labels go, they're not exactly the most ugly things in the world. The thing that I said in my most recent case review, which was very similar to this actually, it was the Montech Sky 2 GX, was that it was fine, but it was a little bit boring. Whereas you definitely cannot say that about this. I think they've done wonders really in terms of design to get something that can be at this price point, but still look as good as this. I mean, it's definitely not perfect. The few things that were a little bit weird about it, but nothing to actually stop me recommending it, especially when you think just how good it looks. As promised though, let's fire up some video games, and this is some Apex Legends. This is running at 1440p, absolute max settings, and as you can see, we're getting anywhere really between about 170 and 230 frames a second. So you are going to have a bit of variance. It's going to depend where you are in the title, but this is definitely going to be a very capable machine. I mean, the combination of that 7700X and the 7700 XT, I think is a winner really. It's definitely not the most inexpensive solution in the world, but I like its flexibility. It doesn't really matter whether it's 1080p, 1440p, or even a little bit of light 4K. This is definitely a combination that is going to hold its own. Turning our attention now to the thermals, and actually on both counts, I think we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, definitely no problems with the GPU, around about 58 degrees. Obviously, this is going to get warmer if you put something more beastly in here, but nothing I would say that is anything close to a concern. And then the CPU is definitely running a little bit on the warmer side, but remember, we've used those low noise adapters on the CPU cooler, so if you wanted to get this down, you could, but we've definitely gone for silence here. Turning things around to something completely different now, and definitely a lot more intense, this is some Returnal, but now we're running this again at 1440p max settings, but now with some ray tracing, and it's not the absolute perfect experience. I mean, we're getting a pretty solid 72 to 80 frames a second or so, but we definitely are getting a little bit of stutter from time to time. It's nothing I would say is particularly game breaking, but it's not going to be as smooth as if you're running on an NVIDIA card. But we've had this running for around about 5-10 minutes, and in terms of thermals, our CPU is at 72 degrees and our GPU is at 55, so no problems there whatsoever, and I have got this tuned down to a really quiet profile. So even running flat out, no noise really at all. You can hear the pump, but I'd say that's just because the fans I've tuned to be really quiet. I mean, really happy with the thermals on this. But the question very much goes out to you guys on this. What do you make of this PC? What do you make of this case? It's not the absolute largest, which actually for a lot of people is very good. It can still accommodate very large graphics cards, though not probably all of them. But most importantly, the price on this is fantastic, and you can also get it in a white variant if you want to go for a white build. You don't need to worry about adding too much to get a great looking system. I think all round, Phanteks have made a fantastic case, just with a little bit of room for improvement. If you've enjoyed this video, please smash the like button, get yourself subscribed for more videos just like this, and of course, if you are interested in current pricing on this case, or literally anything that was featured in this build, you can find that listed down below with our affiliate links. And while you're down there, why not revel in the victorious new Helios range from Acer Predator? Both the Helios 16 and 18 come with up to a 24-core Intel i9-4900HX CPU and the latest NVIDIA 40 series graphics. Cooling is handled by the 5th generation of Acer Aeroblade 3D fans and liquid metal thermal grease, and thanks to the mini LED HDR screens, your games are going to look absolutely stunning. All Acer Predator and Nitro gaming machines also come with 1 month of free PC Game Pass, so you won't need to pay extra for your first weeks of sheer gaming bliss. Grab yours today with the link down below. But thank you so much for watching, we'll catch you in the next one.